All right. So
yeah, hi guys. Thanks for joining. All right. So last week, or I guess last session, we did chapter 1 through chapter 6. And as you guys know, there are 18 chapters, right, in our this book. So the some of the learned men, they basically say that you can break it into 3 sections. And some of the people that we are trying to read is one is why am I blanking out on the name? Help me here, Jason.
yeah, excuse me.
Who are the 2 people we are reading? Okay, Aurobindo Ghosh.
Aurobindo Ghosh. Okay.
Aurobindo Ghosh, and we are reading Mahatma Gandhi, right? So I have the Aurobindo Ghosh's the translation over here, and this is the last couple lines of chapter 6. So chapter 6, he starts talking about, the first 6 chapters is talking about karma yoga, right? And whenever we talk about, it has to do with our current situation. Our current situation, we have dilemmas in life. We don't know how to decide what is the right thing to do, which is what happened to Arjuna on the battlefield. And so this whole first 6 chapters is actually enough for us to kind of lead a better, fruitful life, because we have to work, we have to earn money. And how do you see all these different ups and downs in the world that are happening to us? What is the perspective of when you are working, right? Karma yoga, meaning that, hey, I'm working with no expectation of the result. And I'm enjoying the work as I'm going along. I'm definitely, one of the things he says is I'm not going to be lazy, right? So no work is not good, right? According to Krishna. And Arjuna wanted to just leave the battlefield and go away. So the first six chapters has plenty of information. Now, as we transition from 6 to 7, one of the key important things that we should remember is, one might say we start entering into a little bit of religious stuff. But what we are going to do is we are not going to be focusing on religion, okay? So I think at one of the point we did talk about what does God mean in the context of this Bhagavad Gita. So every time there's a reference to, hey, follow me or follow, God is speaking, right? So that is that deeper voice within us, so we did have that disclaimer a couple of slides ago or a couple of sessions ago, like what does self mean? What does God mean? And today, the way we deal with the world is mostly with our mind. And, mostly we are doing things blindly. We run towards shiny objects and we run away from things that we think are bad to us. And our activities don't feel complete until we win something, but even when we win something, we don't have time to enjoy it because we are ready to win the next thing. So there is a continuous rat race going on. And that's the whole first 6 chapters. So now in the 7th onwards, right, 7 till 12. So we will be talking about how can we make this karma yoga even feasible, and what is it that will make it possible? Because it's all fancy and nice, right? Like, oh yeah, don't focus on the goal and just work and enjoy the work and all that stuff, right? But if you do understand that, And if you have stuck with me, and now we are going to seventh session, it shows that some of the people who have been with me on the journey do understand this, or I hope you do understand, and you have a craving to now instill this in your day-to-day, right? So Aurobindo Ghosh basically says that, there's Karma Yoga, the first six, and what we are going into is Jnana Yoga. And so the idea is that the first six chapters talked about me, right? And the real me. But then now it is talking about Jnana Yoga. So remember, we had this diagram up here, right? So we tend to dwell in this domain here, humans. And the journey is to get to self, the knowledge. And if we just stay in this level of body mind, we will basically just stay in the bottom domain, which is ignorance, knowledge, and stuff like that, right? So seventh chapter.
Question, I think you need to maximize the screen because
I unfortunately we are going to don't this is quite a distraction. So just be with me, okay?
Okay.
And none of this, please do not try to read this. Just stay with me. When there are sections that I want you to look at, I will explode the screen. Okay. So where we now he's going to talk about, so he kind of ended this in saying, yogi is the one who trusts the path of this desireless action that he's talking about, right? And knows that the self, the deeper self, takes care of the final goal of meeting with the self. Remember, in every activity we do, while we think that there is an immediate goal in the world, we as karma yogi or followers of this direction, we should remember that these are just worldly, tiny, puny little goals. There is a larger goal, and that's the only goal that we have, which is finding ourselves. That's it. In every activity we do, if we focus on that part, it brings about joy in the activity that you're doing. All right. So these are just some of my random notes, and so we'll talk about the first three things here. Let me know if you can. This is the maximums, guys. Can you read this, Jason?
I can.
Okay. All right. So I think I'm just going to read this loud. So we are today, because we are only doing one chapter, and feel free to open that link on your computer if you want to. We'll just read it and take a pause and try to understand. And then, if you want, I can go into some of the notes that I have. So the Blessed Lord said, now who is this Blessed Lord? It's not somebody out in some faraway universe, that's not the point. Blessed Lord really here really means Krishna. If this was a character, if this was a real person, Krishna was a human being. He had flaws and he had all kinds of things, right? He would get hurt. He died because of an arrow at the end of his life. But when he is talking to Arjuna, he's not talking from some greedy motive, right? He has already met his self. And that is, the voice is coming from deep within. It's not Krishna speaking suddenly. And, you will notice sometimes that does happen, when we are interacting with our friends and family members or whatnot, right? You sometimes feel like, oh, there's way more going on here than just the superficial thing. So he says here, O Partha, how by Partha is just a small name, pet name for Arjuna. How by practicing yoga with a mind attached to me, this is really important, and with me as ashraya or shelter, thou shalt know me without any remainder of doubt integrally, right? So when you are trying to know somebody, there is definitely, you have some really good friends and, oops, can you, sorry about that. You have really good friends, and you might have a very loved one, yeah, that you think you can talk very freely with them, but there seems to always be a somewhat of a removedness, if you will, right? So there's still the other person's body, their boundaries, my boundaries. So you can only know so much. You think you know the other person, but you don't, right? So here what he is saying is really the Sanskrit word here is ananya. Ananya means there's no other, no other. So he says, by practicing yoga with a mind attached to me, this me is yourself, right? And one can take this as your, if you believe in Krishna, or if you believe in Christ or whoever, right? You could focus on that thing, but ultimately it is about mind attached to my deeper self, and taking shelter there, not in what mind wants you to be confused about, like, oh, I hate this person, I like this person, and all that stuff, right? And if you do that, that's one of the primary criteria. He says that, listen, you've come this far, and if this is what you feel, if you follow these couple of things that I'm talking to you about, I can, you can know what self is without any more doubt, integrally. Now, so then he says, I will speak to thee without omission or remainder the essential knowledge, right? So there is knowledge, all kinds of knowledge out there. There's science, there's physics, math, all that stuff, right? So there is a ton of these, if you will, these are closed doors. And human beings have found, because of their ingenuity, how to open these doors, these little, maybe it's algebra, calculus, or whatnot, rocket, all that stuff. But there's one door that is facing within. And what the book is trying to pursue us is that this is the most important thing. Now, you still, once this door is open, you still go out and explore all of that stuff, but work through deep within, right? So he says there is a essential knowledge that I'm going to tell you about, attended with all the comprehensive knowledge, right? So this is it. By knowing which there shall be no other thing here left to be known. That does not mean that, this book is going to solve your day-to-day mundane so-called problems in the world, or try to resolve, I don't know, AI problems and all kinds of things. And that's not the point. The point is, whatever activity you're approaching in your worldly transactions, that activity, if you just run the way we have been doing it today, we might make mistakes, we might suffer. And to avoid that suffering, first try to find yourself and work from that perspective, right? And what is that finding oneself? Among thousands of men, one here and there strives after perfection, right? There's so many people, but there's only a couple of them that have opened that door within. And of those who strive and attain to perfection, one here and there knows me in all the principles of my existence. So these principles of existence is really key, right? This is it's almost kind of like the most fundamental principle, if you will, out of which all other principles, all other laws of nature or whatever, everything comes out of that basest principle. So I'm going to take a break here, and anybody wants to say something here? All right, if not, we'll keep going. Joseph?
Just a really quick question. What do you mean by essential knowledge again? Could you just
Yeah, essential knowledge is the knowledge of self, just
Okay.
the deeper, like, I go do all these other things, understand that all these other things pull you out there basically because you're a conscious being. And unless and until we understand that, hey, the consciousness is more important, what happens is we tend to run towards outer activities mostly from our mind. And most of the time, the mind is a instrument for bias, if you will. It's always looking for boundaries. It is always saying, oh, yeah, there is this, and then there's that, and then there's a door, and then there's a laptop, right? So it is looking at the boundaries, which is good. You need that. But sometimes we can get dragged into all kinds of issues because we are looking at the boundaries and colors, be it whatnot, love, hate, all of that stuff starts playing a role. And that is, so if you will, really, I like to call this essential knowledge as wisdom, if you will, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you can do things out in the world, and you could be really technically smart, but if you don't have the wisdom, you could be goofing up. You could be making mistakes. You could be hurting people and hurting yourself. So that's what that is. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question, if I
Sure.
could. I wondered if you could comment a little more on the nature of Krishna. I mean, Krishna is talking here as though he is the God, and the ordinary human people should be completely devoted to Krishna. Now, there are a whole variety of, I guess, Hindu deities, and you suggested, well, he's partly human. So perhaps you could discuss a little bit just the nature of Krishna.
Let's talk about that. Yes. Yeah. So I had a slide about that, and I think I might have lost it, but I'll talk through it. So Krishna is a normal person, okay, at least as per the story. And who knows if these stories are accurate or not, but that's not the point of this lecture. Krishna is just a normal person, and we, just like us, we all are normal people, with all kinds of life sufferings and everything. But Buddha, for example, right? Let's take a recent example, which is Buddha. Buddha, also a normal person, right? I mean, he very much normal. He went through life's ups and downs, and eventually he got this so-called essential knowledge. So when people like Krishna, or even Christ says that, right? The path to Lord is through me. So this has twofold understanding depending on where you're coming from. One is, you can say, here is I, and there is God. God is out there, right? So that is one perspective. But really, the deeper understanding of all of this is that this is one, right? God is everywhere. God is in me. God is in you. God is in everything out there, right? So what does that mean? God is within us. What does that even mean? What that means is that, Krishna, the human being, as everybody knew him, he was, having so many love affairs and so many things. He's just a very interesting character. But when it comes to giving advice and giving, whatever he was trying to tell Arjuna, at that moment, or every activity that he does, and which is what he is trying to help us reach, we can be Krishna as well, right? Or ourselves, is that deeper voice. So when he says that I am the main guy, it is as if he wants all of us to consider, you are reading this sentence and you feel that the God is manifesting through you, or all your day-to-day activities. What does that manifestation look like? And that is what this whole Gita is talking about. So sometimes when these books are written back in the days, they, Bible does that as well, right? There is a very superficial understanding, but unfortunately, English or any other language has its limitations. And ultimately, the question that you have asked is absolutely a crucial question. And that's the most fundamental question, before even jumping into philosophy, because we are conditioned to think in a certain way, I and them, I or that person or God. So that once we understand that really what he is trying to, or Krishna is trying to say here is, hey, this I that he's talking about, this blessed Lord that he's talking about, resort to me. What he's talking about is your me, your deeper me, your real me. So your real me is not the me that you think right? So that, hey, this is me, my body, my house, my car. No, your real me is the awareness, the consciousness that allows you to, appreciate something out in the universe. As the light is flowing through your eyes, as the sound is coming through your ear, there's something, and that is what West sometimes calls it Elan Vital, right? Bergson, the person who invented that name. So I guess really the way to understand me and so many gods, hold on to that thought, because he is going to talk about that there are so many gods, and people worship so many gods in India or anywhere else, and that's okay, he says. But there is something even more fundamental, essential, if you will, the principle that is at the foundation of all the gods and humans and everything, because gods ultimately are created by conscious human beings to explain complexity in the universe. So I hope that's clear, and things are going to be clearer, okay, as we go along. So who we have? Tristan, I guess, right?
Hi, thank you. I just had a quick question. Could you speak to the nature of suffering as it occurs in the Gita? Is it a transaction between psychological, somatic, and spiritual experience, or is it something different altogether?
Good point. So suffering is deeper suffering, which is our mental anguish. And of course, there's the physical impact, but the physical impact is, as you know, yeah, it can be fatal sometimes, but most of the times, body wounds can heal. What doesn't heal is our inner mind, inner soul. And that damage can be quite destructive for everybody, not just the person, but other people who are interacting with this person, right? And so that's in a nutshell the suffering that Gita or Hinduism, or for that matter, Bible, Quran, they all are talking about this inner anguish. Mahajan?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that you said Parth is the nickname for Arjun, which is true. But literally in Sanskrit, it means the person who never misses his target.
Okay, there we go. Cool, good. Thank you, Mahajan. All right.
My name is Nalini, by the way.
Oh, Nalini. All right, beautiful name. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so can we move on, guys? Because we have to. We'll take pauses again. All right. Okay. So here he really is wanting us to say, be one with me. Be one with me really means mind attached to me. And this is what you might hear in some management lectures, that active listening, one act at a given time, not two acts. And we know what we do these days, right? There's phone, there's distraction, all that stuff, right? So he's really saying, shut down everything. This is it. Now pay attention to me is what he's saying. And then he talks about, so from 4:4, he says, the 5 elements, conditions of material being, right? So he breaks out, if you remember, this diagram that I had shown to you guys earlier. Let me zoom this in. Right, so there was Prakriti and Purusha. And Prakriti, he says, is eightfold. So what are these eight? Whoops. 8 things that he's talking about. There are 5 elements, which are the gross elements out there in nature. And, we see that, and we always, are paying attention to those things. Earth, water, fire, all of that stuff. Mind. And then there is the subtle elements, right? Subtle, he talks about mind, reason, ego. So these kind of make the eightfold divided nature. So why is he calling all of these as Prakriti or nature or almost out there? So because whenever I can say I can observe something, it's part of nature, not part of you. It's an object to me. So be it fire, earth, water, stone, laptop, and now you come to your body. Your body, you can observe. If I close my eyes, I can say, oh, I am closing my eyes. And if my mind is saying, oh, I don't think I like this person, so I can observe that thought. I can observe my ego rising. I can observe. So whenever you can say, hey, I can observe, there is a subject object thing going on, right? So he's saying all of this is Prakriti. You are something more deeper. And this is also one of the I guess I'll come to that a little bit later on. But let me just switch to the slides here. So eightfold nature, Prakriti, is an object to one self. Right? So we are, it's our consciousness that can witness all this expanse in front of us, right from within our body and everything out there. None of this is I, is what he's saying. So there's the fire, and one way to look at it is everything comes out of fire. That's one of the things that they talk about in our Puranas or mythology, and everybody can, basically it's anything that is gross out there, right? And the space and all of that stuff is part of that. And then there's the subtle form. So, one of the way to understand this, the mind and intellect and ego, because they are objects, right? They are made up over time. They don't exist right from day one when your body is born. Mind and intellect you pick up along the way, and ego starts building as you understand the world and what you have contributed and all of that stuff, right? So because this can be, just like everything out there, gross world can be manufactured, all of this mind and intellect and ego can also be considered as manufactured. It's a social conditioning. So, a lot of the times there's a reason why we tend to behave very mechanized out in the world, almost very predictable to other people, right? And so, in the context of AI and artificial intelligence, right? We are building these robots. We are giving them abilities as we go down this chain of different things. And, at some point, we are going to be able to give all of this stuff to a robot out there, right? Or the AI. But before we even get there, we are trying to build something in our images, which is the robot. We ourselves, we need to look within ourselves, right? We behave in a very mechanized fashion at times, right? Because we are all dwelling out here in the Prakriti. We do not know anything about the deeper self. So the fundamental that he is trying to let us know is that everything I can sense is not me. Um, um, and another key thing that he tries to bring up here in fifth one is this the lower, right? So he calls all of these eightfold natures as lower. But know my other nature. My, again, is not just Krishna's, is for all of us. Other nature different from this, O mighty armed, right, Arjuna, the supreme, which becomes the jiva. This is that Purusha, the self, if you will, and by which this world is upheld. This is absolutely key, right? He basically is trying to make us understand how important it is for you to realize that everything that you do out there, or everything that you perceive, the fun and enjoyment that you get, you have to be conscious for that. If you're not conscious, none of this is going to be of any meaning to you. So in that sense, it is upheld, the whole thing, everything that arises as you open your eyes, the images that start showing up in your eyes and whatever you perceive, knowledge, everything, right? That is, everything is upheld by one thing, one essential thing, and that's the consciousness. Now there is everything, meaning everything that is held by consciousness includes both good and bad, right? Good and bad, we tend to have some religions, sometimes they have come up with Satan as the evildoer, right? Now that is where Hinduism, at least deeper Hinduism, right, tries to say that good and bad, I give birth to everything and I destroy everything too. It is part of one thing. Now, another way to look at this, taking away all the religious elements out of this, is how do we play a role as, finding our own Krishna or finding our own self, is when we are looking at things out there, we don't want to divide them between good and bad. So you are as if it's a sun, and sun is lighting the potholes, which has bad water, and also a very clear lake, right? Or flower. So that's the whole point of this. This is how, world is upheld by that fundamental me, myself. And which means that not in a very egoistic way that, hey, I am giving birth to all of this stuff. That's not the point. The point is that when I am working through myself, I want to be cognizant of the fact that I have had biases towards people, and those have to be wiped away. So then you're acting through mind. But if you're acting through self, then you shouldn't have that stuff. So whatever is happening out there, good and bad, we covered this in I think 5th or 4th chapter, is a law. It's a law of nature. People behave in a certain way which annoys you or not, that's up to you, the annoying part. But whatever is happening out there, that's law of nature, So there are these 3 elements that he talks about, right? The laziness, and somebody who is educated, and somebody who is very much out there wanting to do action, and he gets his satisfaction from that. So tamas, rajas, and sattva. So those 3 elements are always interacting with each other, right? And dharma that we should understand that he is pointing to. Obviously, here there's no Sanskrit, but really the Sanskrit kind of plays important role here. So what he's talking about is that agreeing with the laws decided by the beyond, right? Or whatever, there are laws out there, and you should not be in conflict with those laws. And when you go along with the laws, that is the dharma. Dharma has nothing to do with religion or caste or none of that, So if you are you're looking at these objects, the objects are behaving in a certain way, you should not be participating or disrupting or any of that stuff, right? As you're observing from inside, no biases. And yoga by itself, we know the physical yoga, but really the yoga is the process to reach that self, from within us. As you're going out there, but you got to come back within, and that's the process for those two. So next, let's go down through this, and then we will stop again. Know this to be the womb of all beings, right? All beings come out of this. I am the birth of the whole world, and so too its dissolution. This is really important, like we talked about, right? Positive goods and bads out there are all part of the same consciousness, same God. God is responsible for all of that. There is nothing else supreme beyond me, O Dhananjaya. So we cannot say that, oh, wait, consciousness is something that maybe there's somebody else who is observing consciousness, right? Just like consciousness is observing mind and object and all of that stuff. If we ever had that, it would be just quite regressive, right? Unnecessarily. So he's saying that that's it. That's the consciousness is the most fundamental thing on the planet, everywhere. There's nothing else that is supreme beyond me being the consciousness, or Dhananjaya, right? Dhananjaya is yet another name for Arjuna. On me, all that is here is strung like pearls upon a thread. So if you ever see a necklace, the beads, he akins the beads to the things that are we can see. But there's a thread that is going through all of those beads, right? And that thread is unseen. And we need to be, when we are working out there, whatever we see, every experience, think of it as a bead. But beneath that bead, deep within, there is that thread. That thread is me. That thread is self. That thread is God, if you will, right? Whatever helps you. Because now suddenly what happens is when you look at that experience from this eye, reminder to yourself is that, okay, it's not going to be as disturbing if it was just me trying to deal with this world by myself. We are taking upon the whole weight of the world and all the problems and trying to solve. And, many times, some are solved, some problems get solved, but some don't, and things are out of our control. And remembering that there is more to life as I'm solving this problem helps us solve the problem more effectively. And that's how I take that. So now he starts talking about some really, really interesting things, right? And so how do we start seeing God, if you will, that thread out there on all the experiences, the pearls? And this was one of the meditation techniques that, we covered in Drigdrisha Viveka. And also, we talked about that last time we spoke of it, is our mind wants to see the forms out there, right? As you're dealing out in the world, every moment is a meditation. So when the objects are, the forms and names come towards you, it's fine. It's good enough for identification, but that's about it, right? You suddenly want to switch from their gross form that your mind wants to tell you to something a little more deeper. And what are those deeper things that you can see, right? He is talking about, I am taste in waters. O son of Kunti. Kunti is Arjuna's mother. I am the light of sun and moon. Remember, this book was written in ancient days, right? So they did not know the cosmology as well as we do now. But regardless, I think it's kind of true. Light that is coming out of sun and light that is coming out of moon, our eyes cannot really see the light. What we see is a reflection off of the object. So he says that light is me. Okay. And then I'm the taste in waters or any liquid, anything that you're drinking, right? So that feeling that you get, if you try to write and explain about it, you will not be able to explain this. That's why this is that formless, nameless. That's why you use these words to describe God. I'm Pranava, or the syllable Om in all Vedas. So why does he say that, right? So first he covers, like the physical things, and then, what is coming from the cosmos. And then now he goes into something else, which is sound. So he says that I'm Om. So Om is effectively the cosmic hum, if you will, right? And it is a fundamental thing out of which it's that one thing, if you will, right? Out of which comes out A-U-Ma. A-U-Ma is the break of the syllables out of Om, and A-U-Ma, if you do that, it covers your whole throat and mouth and lips and everything, right? So it's coming from deep within, A-U-Ma. And there's lots of meditation. We talked about this earlier, how you can utilize this. But the point here is that A-U-Ma, the change in our the lips and throat and tongue and everything that result into that A-U-Ma or Om, they tend to be the foundation for language and everything, right? And then the fourth thing he talks about is the manhood in men. So manhood in men here, really, manhood is a way to talk about Purushatva is the actual Hindi word for that. Purush is self. Purush can also mean men, but it also means self. So Purush and Prakriti. So that inner self, that ability for you to go in, that is me, he says, right? And that can, men can have that, women can have that. So yeah, so you don't get hung up on that. I'm pure sent in earth, right? So there's something to our ability to smell things, right? That is also coming because of this deeper consciousness. And we are still trying to figure out how do we smell. It's a very complicated phenomena. So he says that unexplainable phenomena, when you enjoy something, that is me, right? Energy of light in fire. I am life in all existences. I am the ascetic force of those who do ascesis. So this is the people who go to mountains. Remember, I kind of painted you the picture of what India was back in the days. There was a high value given to people who kind of gave up the world and went to the mountains. They would do penance and all that kind of stuff, right? Ascesis is the word that Aurobindo likes to use a lot. So there is a certain level of, if you will, glow that this person who has stayed away from worldly things and stayed with himself, there's a glow that comes along with that, right? And he says that glow is me. That glow is me, right? Know me to be the eternal seed of all the existences, right? So everything comes out of me. And son of Pritha. Pritha is, again, Kunti's name, mom's name. I am the intelligence of the intelligent, right? He's not saying that just the process itself is me, is what he is saying, right? The energy of the energetic. I'm the strength of the strong, devoid of desire and liking, right? So here he starts coming to the real self, a real thing. He's saying, okay, you have enjoyed all the things in this world, and you now should be able to see this in the real world out there, right? And know that there is an element of that deeper consciousness in all of this that is allowing you to enjoy the world. But the I'm the strength of the strong, devoid of desire and liking. So we talked about how he says in chapter 4 or whatever, or even earlier, I think chapter 2 and 3, he says that, you know, desire and liking are the ones that, you know, makes us suffer ultimately in the world. To be devoid of that requires a ton of strength, and that strength comes from me. What does that mean, right? You're not acting through your mind. You are saying, okay, it is disturbing you, mind. I'm not going to listen to you, but you're, you know, maintaining your calm, asking your mind to calm down, and then it is coming, the deeper voice is coming, right? And that strength, that is that strength, you know, and he is the one who gives that strength. And we all have that within us. It's just not Krishna. I'm in beings, the desire, which is not contrary to dharma, right? So the desire and liking can be of world out there, but the desire and liking can also be of wanting to know self, right? And that desire, he says, is not contrary to dharma. That's okay. That's what he's saying. Oh, Lord of Bharatas. Bharat, by the way, Bharat is actually another name for India, the country. All right, so those were the 11 ones. And one of the key things, you know, remember somebody was presenting on this rasa at one point, Jason, if you remember that. So all of this unexplainable thing, you know, be it in music, be it in sound, be it in taste, be it in art, music, light, saint, whatever, right? All of this is called as rasa in the Indian language. So yeah, those were the 11 things. And we can take a pause and talk about it if you want. Anybody has anything to say? Yeah, Jason.
So here, you talk about, oh, the first question. Okay, so when you talk about the God, Krishna said, or the Lord said, "I'm the birth of the whole world," right? So he said, include good and bad. And then the knowledge also took him for self. Does any concept of a conscience fit into this picture?
Conscience. Yeah. So conscience and ethics, right, is something that, you know, there's two ways to do this, right? One is you can write these 10 commandments and say, thou shalt, or thou shalt. And then that builds your conscience, if you will, right, over time, imposed from outside. But which is fine, right? As your kids, you know, growing up in school, you know, to maintain balance in the society, you know, to have a peaceful, civilized life, that's all fine. But when you come to a point where you are looking at Gita is not talking about how to how to run traffic, you know, traffic laws or anything like that, right? What it is saying is that these imposed things are good, and then you won't do that out of fear. So that all of that imposition, all of that conditioning over time, you know, man shall only marry a woman, you know, like those kind of things, right? So what that does is it kind of builds a certain conscience. So a conscience is something that is built over time And a lot of social conditioning plays a role in that, because what is my conscience will not be your conscience as Taiwanese or Chinese, right? There are certain things that I do because of the way the family that I've grown up with, you won't do. I don't have a taste for beef. I eat beef. But a lot of Americans eat beef. They love the taste. So again, it's the understanding of conscience is very different there. So yeah. So what he is trying to say is that while conscience is fine, in fact, Arjuna, right, the depression happens to him is because of the conscience. He says, look, I don't want to kill my grandpa. I don't want to kill my teacher. That is conscience speaking. And he is basically saying, shut off that conscience. This is all social conditioning talking. You are a warrior. You're here for a reason. So now look deeper within yourself. See if your act is being done out of desire or hatred. Everything is okay. Everything is Lord's creation. Everything is God. Given that, would you still, you yourself are God? Would you hate or like things? So now suddenly what social conditioning has imposed on you has a different meaning. So why do you not steal things? Why do you not steal things? It's kind of like putting a hand in my pocket and saying, oh, here's like $20. All right, I'm going to steal from this pocket and put it in this other pocket. So, which is stupid. So stealing suddenly becomes stupid, right? So that is the reason why these things are traffic laws or whatnot, right, out there. So I hope that is clear, right? I think the Eastern philosophy is very much in that, if you look at the deeper ones, right, deeper philosophies, they don't really stress on ethics much. What they are stressing on is this oneness, understand, as long as you understand other human being, as long as you understand your higher purpose, then ethics is just automatic. You don't need external laws to tell you should not murder somebody, you should not drive super fast on freeway. It just comes naturally. You understand, hey, you're in Rome, you better be Roman, that kind of stuff, right? And if you really have to do some murder, you might. And that's not unethical if it is coming from deeper within. And that is one of the things, right? The samurai warriors in Japan, if you really look at their philosophy, is quite interesting, quite deep. And they're warriors. They're killing and butchering people, but it comes from deeper within. It's not coming. The point is that you're not doing it out of anger or fear or any of that. So I hope that's clear. All right, Joseph.
Could you repeat the sacred Om that you were mentioning a moment ago?
Oh, about what the Om is?
Yeah, well, I know what the Om is, because just because I read this section, I read it as Krishna saying, I am the truth. I'm the truth, which is Om Tat Sat, right?
Okay. Om
versus what you said. I should know it, but I don't.
Okay. So what he's saying is that, yes, Om Tat Sat is, yes, Om is the final truth. Now, that does not mean that we have to cling to Om and, have Om in our walls and just say Om all the time. No, that's not the point. That's not the point. The deeper meaning here is that Om is just a silly word. It's if you will, it's just a hum of the universe. And it is the fundamental sound in the universe. And that fundamental sound, it can be broken into smaller sounds. The smaller sound, the other three syllables from Om come three syllables, A, U, Ma. So if you notice, A is coming from deep inside, U, Ma, right? So all these movements of your vocal cord and the mouthpiece and everything, so one becomes three and three becomes many. And now suddenly there's language. And what does language do? Language creates names. So those start creating biases towards us, towards people. names, and we say, oh, that's black, that's white, that's Hindu, that's Chinese, that's Muslim, right? Language gives us this ability now. So what we have to do is we have to come back to the root, which is the Om. Understand that everything came out of Om, meaning everything is one. There's no reason for you to hate based on names and stuff, right? So he says, I am that fundamental syllable out of which everything has come out. Om Tat Sat means Om is the only truth, not that you're white or you're brown or any of that, none of that. Those are just words, right? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, no, it makes sense. I
Okay.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Cool. All right. So we're going to move to 12 now. Okay. And 12 is saying, and as for the secondary subjective.
May I? I'm sorry. This is Nalini. May I?
Oh, sure.
This is in, I think that the question that Joe had, what you said is beautiful, that it is, that's the whole thing, Uma. But to understand it a little bit easily, when you pronounce it's you are actually opening your lips. It's like you said, it comes from your underneath here, but then you're opening your lips. U is where the lips are in a constant position. And Ma is when you close those lips. So basically what you said, yes, it's the cycle of birth, life, and death. Because birth is opening, life is constant, and then death is closing. Also, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. That's just wanted to add that.
Yeah,
Simple.
there is like metaphors upon metaphors, and
Yes,
there's a
exactly.
lot. There's a lot there. So we can't cover that. Om can take its own 20-30 lecture series. So
Yeah,
there's a
no,
lot.
no, I understand that, but just thought that it
Yeah.
would make it
So
easy.
yeah, the point here is that, don't get lost in words, don't get lost in forms, don't get lost in names. It's all out there. And, understand that everything comes from something more fundamental. Oneness, try to see the oneness, right? That's the message. All right, 12. And as for the secondary subjective becomings of nature, the secondary subjective becomings, so he covered all the things that we see out there and some of the things that we kind of experience. He says that there is something called as bhava. Bhav is emotions, feelings, I guess. It's really hard to have a one-to-one meaning for that. This is one of the problems with languages, right? Translation doesn't quite capture it. So he kind of parenthesizes the states of mind, affections of desire, movements of passion, the reactions of senses, the limited and dual play of reason, the turns of the feeling and moral sense. This bhava is sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. Sattvic meaning, again, remember somebody who is good and is more focused on knowledge, that kind of person, right? Sattvic, and not too sense-oriented, if you will. Rajasic is somebody who wants to do a lot out there. He's like a knight or a king, and or all of us. Actually, we all are Rajasic. If you look at it, we always want to do things. That's what wake up and we're doing. We're always doing things. So that's the Rajasic. And Tamasic is somebody who is just lethargic. He's quite lazy. So this bhava, these multiple inner emotions, they are an interplay of these three kind of states. And he sort of covered that earlier too. He kind of brings it back here. They're verily from me. So he says, all those feelings that you feel, don't get mad at them. I give rise to them. Okay. But I am not in them. So even though I give rise to it, you feel it, and you tend to use that to do all kinds of things that you end up suffering later on. I have given that to you guys, right? Again, it's a way of saying you're a conscious being. You could be doing good things and you could be doing bad things, right? But I'm not in them, right? So that's not what life is about. It is they that are in me, right? This consciousness is such an expanse, such a fundamental element, that all of this is interplay within this consciousness. Now, bhava is something that also plays an important role over this devotion piece that we're going to talk about, right? So bhava is emotions that you can put out there in the world or get impacted by the world, and that gives you some emotions. But there's also an emotional attachment to God, like there have been good examples in Christianity, be it Saint Francis or Saint Teresa, I guess, and so many people, right? So they're very attached to this higher purpose, in their case, Lord. And in Indian philosophy or Indian, Indian history, we have had Saint Mira. So she also had emotional attachment. She said, hey, she was married to this king and all that stuff. It's a very interesting history, but she kind of says, why even marry a human being when I can marry the Lord himself? So there is one philosophy that I think Sufis have, and we also have, that is that we all are lovers of that one God, right? And that one self within us. And that's one other way to look at it, right? So there is something to be said about prayer and connection with this deity, this inanimate object that we have decided to call as God. Apart from just knowing this internally, as we are talking here, which is we all have this self. And as long as we act through ourselves, we are okay. While that is okay, many times that does not help. And he's going to talk about that eventually. But I just wanted to bring that here. Bhava is something that, it's not a blind faith. It's more of a love, emotional connection to something, just like, mom has a connection with the kid. No matter how the world might find that kid very annoying, right? Mom has that connection with the kid. So we tend to have bhava towards objects out there, when we want to say, oh, that neighbor, yeah, he earned a lot of money, and, he must have definitely done something corrupt, something horrible, right? So there's this emotional interplay of something that is happening out there in our mind, and we seem to be very invested in those kind of things. So by these three kinds of becoming, right, these three kinds, which are of the nature of the gunas, we talked about the modes. The three modes are the gunas, right, in the nature. This whole world is bewildered, right, and does not recognize me, supreme, beyond them, and imperishable, right? So what happens is these three gunas that are playing out there, depending on how you feel at a given point of time, we get all hypnotized by it. We get pulled into the world. And that will cause us to be angry. That will cause us to be fearful. That will cause us to be greedy and all of that. So because all these doors are going outside like that, right? So he's saying that nobody really has time to recognize that there's somebody in there, right? So I can observe myself being greedy. I can observe myself being angry. That observation itself will alleviate that kind of a feeling. So he says that this interplay of gunas out there is something that we have to understand in that regard, right? Prakriti is in Purusha, Purusha is outside of Prakriti. So yeah, so in this too, he's saying that while you are getting attracted to all of those things out there, there is something supreme within, or the Lord, right? And it's imperishable, right? That is not ending. The world will end, we will die, cycles of birth and death, right? That's imperishable. And now that is something that, once we have achieved that, then everything else you can still continue doing, which is what Krishna does, right? Krishna has found his self, and he's fighting wars, he's playing with women, he's having girlfriends and all kinds of stuff, right? So all of that is okay. This kind of reminded me of a phrase that Jesus uses, right? Seek the kingdom of God, then all will be added unto you. Everything will come to you. But first, try to go back to yourself, right? So we can continue here, unless somebody wants to say something. This is my divine Maya, right? All this thing, that hypnotic thing in the world is the Maya. And it is hard to overcome. It's very hard to overcome that, as we notice, right? We all are living through that. Those cross beyond it who approach me, right? So once we start understanding that thread in those pearls, we will start getting away from this Maya. And that's the goal of life, is what the ultimate goal of life is, not get pulled into the Maya, but try to overcome it. The evildoers attain not to me, souls bewildered, right? So he calls them evildoers, right? So really, the only sin, according to Gita, if you will, is forgetting about self and acting out there. And then, of course, everything follows, right? Stealing, murder, all that stuff. But really, that's the most fundamental thing. He calls them the evildoers, souls bewildered, low in the human scale, for their knowledge is left away from them, right? They don't gain any wisdom. They might earn a lot of money, they might do all that stuff, but there is no wisdom that they get through this whole entire life, and the life is wasted by Maya. And they resort to the nature of being of the Asura. Asura is, if you will, a bad person, but also, a lot of our stories has Asura in them. Like Ramayana has Ravana. Krishna had Kansa, his own uncle, his mom's brother, wanted to kill him. So Kansa was an Asura. Sura means symphony, balance. Asura means imbalance, something that is not in a resonance with life or dharma. Among the virtuous ones who turn towards me, the divine, with devotion, right? This is key now. Now he is slowly going to transition into something that we might think, oh boy, here comes preaching. Here comes the Hinduism. We are not going to do this, right? So, Arjuna, right? So this devotion here really is, if you will, we can have knowledge, a philosophical understanding of something, but unless and until it becomes part of our life, because knowledge can be gathered, right? We could be these hoarders, is what one of the Swami calls us. Now that we all speak English, and we know how to read books. Books are available. We read a ton of books, but making it part of our life, whatever philosophy you're reading, we just want to read and finish. Next book, read, finish, read, finish, read, finish, right? So we are always in that mode. So the devotion element comes where, you are almost kind of, I guess I'm hesitating to use the word surrender. But surrender does not mean like there's a master and a slave relationship. It's almost kind of like a humility, if you will. Devotion, that deity, if that deity is bringing you a humility, or your teacher or whoever, right? Your mother, father, sister, kid, there is a way to approach life. And so devotion is key, as he says, right? Oh, Arjuna, there are 4 kinds of bhaktas. So this goes back to the question that somebody asked earlier about so many gods in India, right? So he's going to cover that now. So there are 4 kinds of bhakta. Bhakta means devotee. So the suffering, the seeker for good in the world, right? One is the sufferer. So, hey, I have this ailment, God help me. Or, so we go pray. The seeker for good in the world, there's a lot of charity related people, hey, I want to pray for United States to be this or be that or whatever, right? So again, suffering is about me, good in the world is about a little more larger me. Seeker for knowledge. So this is the one that wants to like pray to pass an exam maybe or do well in an exam, do well in school, all that kind of stuff, right? Seeker for knowledge. And those who adore me with knowledge, right? So once you gain the knowledge, how can you imbibe that in your life? That's the adoring process. That's the adoring, understanding the deeper meaning of every, let's say you're a religious person. What is this? Why am I doing this? Understanding what is it? How is it getting me closer to me? If you're not a religious person, then it is about activity that you're doing out there. Maybe you're at a job in the office. How can that job bring you closer to me, right? Adoring me means you're constantly thinking about it. Oh Lord of the Bharatas, right? Again. So 17, of those the knower who is ever in constant union with me. This is again the one that, he says how you constantly want to think about the self, whose bhakti is all concentrated on him. Again, you can think of this as a God out there, but there's the God within and God in all of us, right? Everybody, every good and bad thing in the universe is the best, he said, right? So that understanding that divinity in self and everybody is the best. He loves me perfectly and is my beloved. So yeah, I mean, he basically is again impressing upon us that while you do all this stuff, this is all good, but ultimately this is the best. Noble are all these without exception. See, one of the key things he says is he's not hating anybody. He's saying they all are noble. Everything is fine. If you like a God, if you like devotion, if you are asking in a prayer to fix your ailment, if you are asking for good in the world, if you're seeking knowledge and if you want to win that award or whatnot, all good. It's all noble causes. Noble are all these without exception. You could be praying to hurt your neighbor. That's okay too. That's what he's saying. But the knower is verily myself, right? For as his highest goal, he accepts me, the Purushottama. Purushottama, you can break it into Purusha, and Uttama means highest. Highest of all the Purushas, or the conscious thing within us, with whom he is in union. At the end of many births, the man of knowledge attains to me. So he's saying, while you're in the world suffering and you're praying, you want benefits and you're greedy, all of that is fine. Don't worry about it. You're going to have many births. So you are going to come to a point where you will realize that, oh, what I was asking for was quite petty, So he's saying that's okay. At the end of many births, the man of knowledge attains to me. You will come to a point where you would adore me, and that's it, right? Very rare is the great soul who knows that Vasudeva. Vasudeva is yet another name for Krishna, or that ultimate self, the omnipresent being, right? It is everywhere. It's not a human form God, okay? Is all that is, right? So he's saying, and I personally don't quite believe in rebirth and all that stuff, which is fine. It's a good way to explain a lot of complicated things in the world. But the way I understand this is our life as a child, as a teenager, in first job, second job, third job, wife, divorce, kids, old age, right? All of this trajectory, if I was to think about my childhood when I was 5-year-old, probably I won't remember anything. Maybe I'll remember one or two random things. As I come to teenager, there are little things here and there, but there are some dumb things that I've done then, right? And then it's like, oh my God, I can't believe that must have been some other life, right? So as you're going through life, all these different things, these are multiple lives, in my opinion. And he's saying that if your trajectory is following the right direction, at some mid stage, later stage, you will realize the futility of the greed or the worldly pursuit, right? And you will come to attain me. Men are led away by various outer desires, which take from them the working of the inner knowledge, right? So we are so focused on these outer desires that inner working we just don't understand. We just take consciousness for granted. They resort to other godheads, right? There are lots and lots of gods out there, 33 million to be very specific, or 3.3 million, I have no idea. And they set up this or that rule. Remember, every religion comes with rules. There's this, you follow this, eat in the morning, eat in the evening, before the sunrise, before the sunset, all that kind of stuff. So he calls that out here. And this is really key, right? I think sometimes people read whatever they want to read in a scripture. And when people read what they want to read, I don't want to blame them. It's like what I can see is dependent on my level of understanding, right? So my level of understanding is how much I can gain from that topic, whatever I'm reading. So, so here he actually calls it out that so many places that he has actually called out the whole caste system is wrong. And, you just need to peel the layers in Gita. They resort to other godheads, 3.3 million gods, and they set up this or that rule, which satisfies the need of their nature, how they are built, their conscience, if you will, right? So they make up these rules. So they make up God. They make up whatever they want to make up. Whatever form of me, again, those gods, those rules, everything is a form of me, he says, right? Whatever form of me any devotee with faith desires to worship, I make that faith of his firm and undeviating. See, he is not here to change your day-to-day, whatever you're doing. That's a very important thing to understand. He's saying, whatever you're doing is just fine. Don't worry about it. It's all okay. If you believe in a God that is in a stone, or if you like to go to Rishikesh or Banaras or whatever, like all these pilgrimages that makes you feel happy. If you like to just go behind the money drive, make more money, all of that is just fine. And if you do that with devotion, right? With devotion means complete concentration on that activity, you will be successful. I guarantee that success. That's what he's saying. I meaning, again, your deeper self, again, your mind and all of that is not coming in. We are not being our own enemies. So whatever pursuit, worldly pursuit that you're doing, if there is devotion, if there is humility, if there's devotion, if there is concentration in what you're doing, he's saying, I make that faith of his firm. It's okay, he says, and undeviating. And, he will get what he's asking for. He endowed with that faith, worships that form. And when by the force of that faith in his cult and worship, he gets his desires, right? I'm praying for XYZ and I'll get that. It is I myself who give these fruits. So I'm the one that is fulfilling those things. But these fruits are temporary. He says, yeah, well, all of that is good. Let me tell you something more, right? He says, those fruits that you've asked for, those are temporary, sought after by those who are of petty intelligence and unformed reason, right? So whatever is driving you towards that, understand the pettiness in it. What is the most important thing is understanding the self. Once you understand the self, acting out in the world is okay. To the gods go the worshippers of the gods, but my devotees come to me, right? So he's saying, while there is devotees out for different deities out there, there is a devotee that understands that in all these deities, in all these rituals, there is a deeper understanding that I need to have, which is wanting to know myself. Nor am I revealed to all, right? He's saying it's not necessary that I will be revealed to everybody. They will be busy with their gods and stuff. Enveloped in my yoga maya, right? This whole confusion, this whole hypnotism, I have created this. This bewildered world knows me not, the unborn, the imperishable. I know all past and all present and future existences, O Arjuna, but me none yet knows. So Krishna's time on this planet, there were a lot of people who knew him. And they all thought that he was just some average guy. Very, very, very few people knew him to be some deeper person. He is now revealing it to Arjuna. Arjuna also, until this day, he always just thought of him as a friend. So I know all past and all present and future existences. So what does this mean, right? So it's sort of like, our mind, when we are thinking of certain experience, that experience biases us based on our past something. Or that experience is wanting us to think about some bad future that might be coming. As that experience is happening, we are saying, oh my God, 10 years from now, this is going to happen to my son, and I better warn him, So we are painting all these, taking some past experience and coming up with some really disastrous future. And that is driving our action in present, right? So now if we were to shut down these impacts of past and, whatever those biases and our decision today and our dwelling on future, if we were to shut that down, then the action that is going to happen to you, that experience, is going to want you to do something. That doing is going to come from deep within. It's not going to cause you suffering, right? And when he says, I know all past and all present and all future existences, so he is talking about when you start living in the world without these biases, you can actually start being more intuitive. You can intuit things much more better, as things are coming along. You can say, oh, you know what, if we do this, I remember this from my past history. It's going to happen. Something bad is going to happen. Something good is whatever. So the point is that you suddenly, what happens today with us is we are stuck on the scale of time. So we are so close to time that, all this past is impacting us. And then there is this future timeline that, we are worried about. But let's say this is happening because of our mind, right? As we move up in our thought process, we can look at these events from past and future a little more holistically. And you can also kind of intuit what might happen in future. Your memories are going to be a bit more clear and not biased, right? So he says, I know all past and all present and future, meaning the self, right? So our deeper self knows things a bit more wider spectrum than what we acting through our mind knows, right? By the delusion of the dualities which arise from wish and disliking, O Bharata, all existences in the creation are led into bewilderment. Why are we hypnotized? We're hypnotized because we are running towards something or running away from something. But those men of virtuous deeds in whom sin is come to an end, right? Remember what we talked about, what the sin is. Sin is somebody who is just transacting in the world, right? And mindlessly. That is the sin. They, freed from the delusion of the dualities, worship me steadfast in the vow of self-consecration. So this is again, he brings out the whole thing that we sort of talked about earlier, which is offering. So it is going to be very hard for our mind to be turned off, when a hateful thing comes in front of you, when a loving person comes in front of you. To be neutral is going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to be very painful for you, for your thing to kind of say, I want to shut that down, right? That is where comes about the sacrifice that you have to do. Is okay, you know what, this short-term sacrifice, short-term gain that I'm going to get out of this, hating this person or loving this person, I need to shut that down. And that is going to involve self-consecration, right? So offering. And you have to be steadfast in that particular direction. Those who have resort to me as their refuge, those who turn to me in their spiritual effort towards release from age and death, from the mortal being and its limitations, come to know that Brahman, and all the integrality of the spiritual nature and the entirety of karma. So age and death and the limitations of mortal being is a quite interesting thing, right? If you look at our desires and dislikings, or what we love and what we hate, really is very deeply connected with death. We are fearful of dying. We are fearful of going out of so-called existence, right? And a lot of our actions tend to be driven from that mentality, from that kind of mindset. So once we understand that, this refuge that he's talking about is, I am this limitless self. I'm not this puny little me that the mind wants to tell me, that I have this house, I have this family, and those are the only loved ones. That's it, right? That is that I that we have defined for ourselves. And then all of everything that we do is guided by that, because we are afraid of losing the family, or ultimately we are afraid of losing oneself to death. But once we realize this deeper me, once we understand that this body is ending, everything is going to die. Dying is part of the process, right? And we understand that this person observing these changes is somebody deeper. That never dies, right? So that takes away that fear. But for that, you need this offering, this kind of sacrifice, and trying to get away from this hypnotic behavior that we have, right? And suddenly the impact of day-to-day, our youth and old age and all of that, aging and death process, this whole thing has no impact, because I realized that, yeah, it's just a body. It's just a costume. It's going to go away, right? So and whatever the limitations that this was bringing me, it's not going to be impacting me much. Now I can understand that Brahman, right? You now know it, not just understand it, know it, like, because that becomes your actual reality, right? The limitlessness and all the integrality of the spiritual nature and the entirety of karma. So all the things that are happening around here, and all of this is happening in the consciousness. So you now understand that, right? And then finally, this line actually kind of leads into chapter 8, but we'll read this. Because they know me and know at the same time the material and the divine nature of being, right? So there's these two things that are constantly appearing in front of us. There's something of a name form, but there is that thread. These are all beads, and then there's the thread going through it. And the truth of the master of sacrifice, they keep knowledge of me also in the critical moment of their departure from physical existence. This is very, very crucial, right? So there is this interesting book of death in Tibetan culture. It just came to me right now because it's kind of relevant there. They talk about as a person's body is withering, they're dying, there are these varieties of Buddhas start appearing. There's angry Buddha, there is scary Buddha, there's peaceful Buddha, and all that, right? So one of the things that they recommend is that, the loved one who is partnering with this person who is going through the process of death, they're basically telling him, it's okay, whatever. Because what troubles us as we are dying, why is death so horrible, is because there are these desires that have been left unfulfilled. And we feel unhappy about that, right? As we are dying. But what he is saying is that if you have not had that thing impact you, death is just yet another sleep, it's just kind of going to happen. So the departure is going to be way more easier. You're not going to struggle with death and have at that moment their whole consciousness in union with me. So, in Indian, if you have any loved one die, my mom passed away a few years ago, and I for the first time, I witnessed all the rituals of all the ceremony that happens around death. There's a lot of God that is going on, they put the God figure in the mouth or whatever, and then they say Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, and a lot of that stuff going on, right? Hoping that that person whose body has already left, it's dead, and that body is just a bunch of material at that point. The idea is that really, the deeper idea there is that as we are on the deathbed, we are thinking about something higher, not something worldly. But what happens is in these rituals, those rituals are happening after the body has passed away. So really it doesn't, the body, the person must have died with so much turmoil, that it doesn't quite help him or her as the death is happening, because all these processes happen later on. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting. So what he is saying here in this chapter is that not only throughout your life process, as you're living every moment, understand that thread, understand those beads. Every experience has that thread of self, consciousness, important that, right? So, and if you remember that, then you understand that you're a conscious being, and that is helping you experience this stuff. You can also appreciate that same thread in the other person or that experience, and you'll have a better, be it a displeasure, be it whatnot, right? You will have a mental calmness about it, and the experience will be much better. And the experience is not going to leave impressions on your mind, because these impressions are the ones that kind of leave these memories, and you want to do that, or you want to run away from that experience, right? And then death being the worst experience throughout the life. It's going to happen. It's happening. So he says at that point too, remember the thread, remember that me. And so this departure is going to be a bit more easier. And he starts going into all of that a little more in detail in chapter 8. So yeah, that's it. Anybody wants to say something?
I think that's great. We finish on time.
That's the goal for Jason.
Yeah, I think that'd be ideal. And I also want to do this way, but I think you and I have the same problem. Sometimes over prepare and then get over time. So yeah, I think we should do some self-control. Thank you, Sasha.
Yeah.
That's the idea. I will set this one as a role model. So leave like 15 to 20 minutes for free discussion. Yeah.
Any parting thoughts by anybody? Anything that they disagree with? Who asked the question about the gods? Are you still there? I forgot now. Sorry.
Yep, still here.
Yeah. Does that Godhead thing kind of bring you back to the question? Like, he brings that up. He says, yeah, there's lots of gods in India, and there are lots of rules, but that's not it, he says. And I'll be okay with that, he says. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. If that's what rocks your boat, he says, good, I'll support you with that, he says. But he says, anything that you do, try to keep devotion in it. And, there's a lot of different philosophies that have emerged, right? The so-called the secret or law of attraction, if you will, so that people can make more money and all that stuff, right? So a lot of those have come out of this kind of thinking, right? That as long as you follow this, whatever you want, you will get. The unfortunate thing is you always get what you want. Then the regrets start after that. But anyways.
I do have a question on the I think the chapter 7, the title is Yoga of Knowledge, and I think the word is Vijnana, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So and the knowledge is to looking for self. So does Hinduism or Indian culture or different concept for like practical wisdom, okay, other than this kind of intellectual wisdom? In Greek, it would be Sophia and phonesis, right? That's the practical wisdom, how to things. Is that a different concept, or also include in the Vijnana?
So yeah, so there is the essential knowledge, and then there's the comprehensive knowledge. So Vigyan also happens to be our Indian translation of the word science. And think about what science is. Science is all about analysis, about knowing what is out there, right? And of course, our body parts and all of that stuff. And, Krishna has already said that our body, our mind, our ego, everything is outside of us. So Vijnana is about knowing everything comprehensively. But in Gita's context, once you understand yourself, understanding the world becomes much more comprehensive. You're not understanding the world out of bias. You're not doing science to hurt somebody or for greed and all of that stuff, right? So there is the essential knowledge is the jnana. Comprehensive knowledge is the vijnana. Comprehensive includes everything that you see in transactional world, but it is derived from the essential, the most fundamental knowledge. So I don't know if that helps you. Those are the two.
So for example, okay, how to bike, okay, how to swim, okay, how to ski, right? This kind of knowledge.
It's comprehensive. That's
does it-
vijnana. That's vijnana.
Vijnana, right? So, okay.
Yes,
So
yes.
does Vijnana higher than jhana?
No, well, it's not. They're not higher or lower. Okay, they just are talking about there is a jnana is about self, vijnana is about outer world.
Oh, so it's not higher or lower. That's a different realm. That's put it.
But no, there is the outer world. Don't go to outer world until you know yourself.
Okay, so it's essential. I have to know myself, then I learn how to ski. Okay.
Yes.
I don't ski without knowing myself. That's pretty.
And if you look at all the experts out there, right? Basketball players or football players, they are in the zone, and that zone has nothing to do with, if you really ask them how did you do it, they wouldn't be able to explain that. Or Einstein or Madame Curie, all these people, they do understand this, even though they don't have words or anything. A lot of this exists. The people who get successful, they are following these principles unknowingly, right? And unfortunately or fortunately, these have been captured here. I say it unfortunately because once we understand this, we think we know and we feel like we are wise. Instead, let's say we did not know about this. We could be out in the world struggling with things, fighting things, being greedy, doing all kinds of damage and all of that. But there comes a point in that trajectory where you realize the futility of it. And that is the point you suddenly become Krishna. So there are so many stories like that in Indian mythology. In fact, the book Ramayana, or the whole epic that was written by a person who was a murderous thief or something, but then, he comes to this realization after all these bad things. Buddha had stories like that in his life too. So yeah, that's why I say, it's unfortunate that we get to read this. It's unfortunate that we know Buddha because we think we suddenly know, yet as we are working out in the world, transactional world, when that moment comes when you have to execute on these things, we tend to forget. But it's good, it's good to have this where, I certainly feel a little more positive. So when I'm reading this stuff and interacting with people and stuff like that. So ultimately, it's all about internalizing it, right? So yeah.
Could I follow up a bit on the gods?
Sure.
Among Hindus,
Yeah.
Do different people, in a sense, look to or worship different gods? Do some people worship different gods for different purposes? Who are the major deities that people look to? Do people there's been a fair bit of talk about sacrifice in this book. Do people actually have a sense of sacrificing to one or more of the deities? Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So there are two questions here. So who are these deities and why do people follow them? So the fundamental deities, if you are looking for something like that, and I think Nalini kind of brought that up earlier. So Brahma is the creator, if you will. Like he is the one, remember his name Brahma and Brahman, the consciousness, very similar, right? So out of consciousness comes this desire to create, if you will. That desire is Brahma. Then comes Vishnu. Vishnu sustains the creation. He is the one that provides for everything, every stuff. And we had this discussion up in the third section where we talked about how rain and water and all of that is here to make us more productive. So some worship that kind of deity to help with survival. Then there is the destruction, the Shiva. Shiva is responsible to destroy this planet and the universe, and then the cycle starts all over again, right? So there are multiple rebirths and multiple deaths and all of that stuff, right? So different people have chosen to pray Vishnu or Shiva for different reasons, right? So Vishnu himself, because he's the god of sustainer, what has happened is that over time, there must have been different historical figures that have come along. Krishna happens to be one of them. And then Buddha, right, along the way later on. So there are so-called 10 different reincarnations that they talk about. And all those reincarnations are also gods of Vishnu. They say everything is Vishnu. Now, one way to look at that is, yes, they form the deities and those deities get worshipped at different points of time. Rama was one of them. Krishna is yet another. And, they have also included Buddha in that list of reincarnations. But the way to think about it is any one of us, according to Krishna, once we understand that deeper self, once we understand this, we also become the incarnation of Krishna. We are in the image of God, right? But we can also manifest God through our daily activity. That's the deeper understanding of this. But there are all these deities. So then the Puranas, this is our mythology. There is a whole canon of those, right? That has families and just like Greek mythology, right? They have kings and queens and their brother and sister and daughter and this and that. And then there are some interesting characteristics of these guys. There's a god whose face is made out of elephant. So there's a story behind that, why that happens. And the elephant god is considered as somebody, whenever you're doing some activity, you first pray to that god before you pray any other god. And then you start your activity. Again, all of this, in my understanding now, compared to, let's say, a couple decades ago, these are devices. These are devices for us to realize that it's not about what you are doing that is making this happen. Not alone you, because that is the ego part. You're saying, hey, this inanimate Godhead, the elephant god, he helped me. This Rama helped me. Krishna helped me. And so you say that because I prayed to this God, the God came and helped me. Now, let's say you do fail sometimes, right? When you fail, there is yet another way to think about it. You don't blame the God. You blame your own past karma. You say, I must have done something wrong. That's why this is happening. Again, all of this is a device to help you have a better understanding of life and not feel frustrated when bad is happening. And when good is happening, don't let it go to your head. Understand that there's more to things, like let's say you came up with E equals MC square. Before E equals MC square, you were Einstein. There were laws established. Nature was already established. There's way more things that are happening that is helping Einstein to come to that knowing. Your second question was about sacrifice. Sacrifice, so there is sacrifice in Christianity as well, right? Abraham is asked to sacrifice his son. The way to understand that is, yes, you can do literal stuff. And then, he started killing the goats. And now in Hinduism, there are sacrifices, Not anymore, right? Not anymore are there sacrifices. But in the older rituals, there were animals that were given to God and all that stuff, so-called God, right? So they would be killed. But again, going to that biblical story, right? The idea there is that, can you sacrifice something that you love so much? And who is the one that Abram loves so much? Is his own son. And he says that that's the challenge. So again, going back to the element that was talked here, which is all of our activities are driven from desire, love of something, and hate of something. So can we stop ourselves from loving this person so much? Meaning, even if that person is sacrificed, it's not going to impact you. So you're willing to even let that relationship be not, like you're not so attached to it. So that's the understanding of sacrifice. A lot of these things in almost every religion, every old books that have been written, people take it literally and then forms all these, dogmas and stuff like that, right? And that's what he says here, right? They resort to other godheads and they set up this and that rule. Kill this, kill that, eat this, don't eat that, all that stuff, right? And he says that's fine, but that's not it. That's not the only thing. These are stepping stones towards something high. Does that help you?
Thank you. Yep.
Jason?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question about the three gunas, the sattva, rajas, and the tamas. So
Right.
can I say everyone have these three gunas, and that is sattva is in control of rajas and the tamas? Can I say this way?
No. No. So, and he covers that in like 3rd chapter. If you want to go back there, you can read that. So sattva, all it means is that I don't desire for myself, but I want the good of the community, if you will, right? So, and part of it could be I'm more knowledge oriented and like, just a little more introvert, if you will. So a lot of these, sattva means good, basically. Rajasa means royal, like king. These are the ones, the fighters, they want to do things, lots of doing. A lot of doing is because they want to earn some name for themselves, almost kind of like the Alexander, or a lot of these big warriors that have happened over time, because they want to say, hey, I ruled over the world, like I conquered so many places, right? And we are also Rajasic because we are doing things mostly because we want to do things and we want to win this, win that, right? So that is Rajasic. Tamasic is very lazy person, right? They don't want to do anything. They don't want to contribute towards the society, and that's bad. So the idea is that none of these things are something that you want to be attached to. You want to grow above these 3 gunas. What does that even mean? What that means is that you can observe something like your mind wants to say, oh, I want to help that beggar. I want to help that beggar can be seen as, look, I'm doing something good for this planet, for this person. So it can build a lot of ego in you when you do that. Now, rising above sattvic means that when you're helping the beggar, help the beggar. But that help, understand that not only did you help the beggar, but it brought some joy to you. So it's a give and take relationship. So there is no ego built up within you. That is rising above this feeling of I'm helping you. Similarly, Rajasic. Rajasic, how do you rise above Rajasic? Meaning karma yoga. So all the actions that I do, I am doing it for glory, my own glory. Wait, no, you don't do it for glory. You don't do it for this winning name in the society. You're doing it for a much larger cause, which is helping the society and remembering that the journey is towards the self. Not like, oh, I did good the year, I'm going to do some excel somewhere else. No. While you're working here, try to build humility within you for that whatever activity you have gotten, and slowly move towards self-a, and then start doing the same activity. Tamasic is, how do you rise above tamasic? Meaning you understand that this behavior that I don't want to do something is wrong, is bad. So you bring some action in your life, bring some karma in your life. So then you're going to go through the phase of being Rajasic and Sattvic, depending on, are you doing it for your own glory? Are you doing it for good? I don't know if that helps, but basically what it is saying is that these three things are always interplaying with each other. You want to observe it as a witness. Don't go into it saying, oh my God, Mahatma Gandhi is the best, and I'm going to follow Mahatma Gandhi. No, you don't follow anybody. You be yourself. You is what you need to follow. You don't follow a leader just because you like that person, because you think he is Sattvic. You don't hate somebody because that person is lazy. You don't hate somebody who is going and doing something for their own glory, right? That is something that you want to pull yourself away from that and say, oh yeah, that's just nature. That's okay, right? Does that make sense, Jason?
Yeah. So I just repeat one more, make sure I understand it, because so you are talking about these three gunas is based on not the personality, that's on every deed or every action, right? So for example, I enjoy the dinner, I drink totally drunk. So basically, that this behavior is totally a tamas behavior. So that's what I'm doing, right?
So Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic is going to come throughout the 18 chapters. And he is going to kind of categorize, saying, look, that is Sattvic, that is Tamasic, that is Rajasic. But ultimately, the goal is to rise above all of them. They could be actions, they could be experience, they could be people, they could be objects, they could be everything. And remember, this was based on the philosophers whose philosophy was called as Sankhya. Mm-hmm. Sankhya means numbers. So they are the ones who basically said that this world can be, all these feelings and everything can be based on these three modes, right? They are interplaying with each other. All right. So Joseph, did you want to say something?
Just really quickly, the idea of the not necessarily imitating somebody, and I understand the idea of the journey into the self. But what if you have a sage or a guru?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, did your video pause? You done?
No, yeah, no. I was just basically, if you have that, okay. Is that something you're supposed to imitate?
Emulate. Emulation.
Emulate. Yeah. Emulate.
So in fact, this here is actually, I think, in 8th chapter or somewhere, he's going to talk about that. Oh, no, actually, he talked about that earlier. So it is many a times, right? We are wired to be egoistic. We are wired to have this mind misguide us. And a lot of the times it happens unknowingly. And then we learn all this knowledge and we seem to understand that philosophically. We seem to understand the logic there. It makes sense. And we say, aha, that's it, done. Now, when it comes to execution time, right? When you're interacting with your wife, or when you're interacting with your son, or you're interacting with your neighbor or your manager, you notice that, this is what we learned in Gita. But boy, that is quite disturbing me right now. This is not good. This is just, it doesn't work like this. I cannot, I have to hate this thing. This is just abominable, right? And that is the time, that is what I call walking the talk, right? Walking the talk is the hardest, and he says that. So this is where there are two things that you want, two places that you want to go towards. Is that first of all, you want to understand that working, yes, mistakes are going to happen. Your mind is very hypnotizing. So you don't want to lose the trust or the faith in this. It's kind of like you have signed up to become let's say an electronics engineer. That's going to happen in 4 years from now. You know that in 4 years, you're going to be an electronics engineer. But on the first year, it's all faith. You are out there to like understand what the teacher is telling you, and you're going to, it's not about belief. This is where bhava plays an important role. Emotional attachment, right? Yes, mistakes are happening, and don't feel frustrated towards yourself. And this is where you can do that to yourself by saying, aha. But it is very hard, right? At that moment, when you understand there's something abominable out there, you just have a very hard time to say, no, I shouldn't hate that thing, That's where guru plays a role. Guru is outside of you. That guru can say to you, look, this is happening to you right now. You need to calm yourself down. And emulation of guru is fine, but really taking your real problems and discussing it, all the knowledge has to be realistic to you. Otherwise, it never gets converted into wisdom. Knowledge stays knowledge. It feels good. And, if you look at all of our civilized society, we don't have that many threats, right? We all live a very superficial life. So for you to go through this big major dip, you should think that as a God's blessing. When that happens, your existence has broken. And when that happens, you can now approach your guru and say, hey, look, I was emulating you, but here's a real problem. Give me advice. Arjuna says that in first chapter to Krishna, right? I'm helpless here. Give me advice. So Krishna becomes his guru. And guru is something, doesn't have to be one guru, right? Life is a teacher. So the whole idea of devotion, where you express humility to every situation in life, not just your deity. The nature of humility is key when approaching the world. Humility allows you to be teachable. Now everything becomes a guru. You're willing to learn from good and bad and horrible things out there. And that learning will stick with you. So the idea is not so much about the guru as much as it is about being a student. You have to be a good student. Then you will get a guru. For example, right? I was a bit lost when I started this journey here on this philosophical stuff, right? And I'm talking with Jason, and Jason doesn't know me. I don't know Jason. Jason says, what about this, Shashi? Because I came up with an idea to talk, and he said, oh, that sounds great. But would you rather do this? He said. I said, oh, that sounds good. And I said, okay, I can do that. And I started doing that, right? And I feel like Jason has been my teacher, even though there is no impartment of any kind of knowledge, right? So there's this, I'm very thankful to him to guide me in this direction where I am reviewing these things. I've always wanted to review this, but working with you guys and understanding your questions, those are my questions too. And so this is the whole idea of being a guru. Emulation is fine, but when that crisis moment happens, that's when really, execution will happen, right? Yeah.
I'll just say quickly, thank you, because these slides actually, for doing this, because these slides actually really depict a lot of the concepts beautifully, actually, in the Gita that make it accessible. So
yeah. I have multiple sets floating around, and they tend to be a bit haphazard. So I was trying to put it up there, but I suddenly realized that, I think the video does a much better job. The video has it in a little more holistic fashion, if you will. So it is better for people to go there. And, we will do more reviews along the way as you want. Because I mean, I had that summary review slide set. I have this, and I have like so many slides. It's yeah. Anyway, so Nalini, you want to say something?
Yeah, that's the final one from the.
That's the final one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you for a wonderful presentation. I learned a lot. It was really, very enjoyable. And
Thank you.
like Joe, I was also thinking it would be nice to have slides, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a journey that you have to go on yourself, make your own slides. I will get the slides. Really, I think this is for you to kind of sit with it and
Yes.
understand,
Yeah.
use it in daily life, right? And daily life meaning there's really very small fundamental things that we talked about, which is every time you're interacting, let Gita come to you and understand, I can see a woman, I can see a man, there's more to it. I can see this person, I have hated him in the past, let me turn that off. That is way more important than these slides.
No, but
I'm working on it myself.
But the way you explain in the slides, I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
Because your slides have a combination of science. My husband was a scientist, so from that perspective, I look at it the way you explain things. It's a beautiful combination of science and spirituality and religion. That's what
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, yeah, the videos are available.
yes.
At the end of this, I think after
Okay.
18 chapters are done, what I'll do is I'll put my act together and we will have a big set of slides. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, usually I will put in. If you go to the meetup page on the bottom, that
Yes.
I have the PowerPoint and everything available there. So
Oh,
sometimes
they-
1 or 2 days late, but yes, but you will always find it. And then one thing, like if you find out the mistake or something I did wrong or something, don't hesitate to let me know, because we are not professional. We just do it quickly. Sometimes have a mistake, misspelling in the PowerPoint. Please let us know. That's important.
Jason, where are these slides?
That's in the if you go to the let me stop the
invitation. Yeah, but they don't have the Bhagavad Gita slide.